Hello everybody, my name is Boulevard, and welcome to the final edition of the Seasonal Championship Gauntlet. We're going to be rounding things out with the last event of the Shurima expansion, the final seasonal of 2021 season, Rise of the Underworlds, and its champion, Mr. Emotional, from August of 2021. Historically, triple aggro has been a very poor performer at the seasonal. We've had 10 of them so far, and only about 5 people have actually been able to top the seasonal with triple aggro. Mo actually doing it twice, back-to-back 9-0 runs at the Guardians of the Ancient and Rise of the Underworld seasonal. Believe lost to What Am I in the top 32 of Guardians, and then of course converted it into a win at Rise. So now let's go over the meta, the decks, the changes, and then do the run. Rounding out the Shurima season, we had the most diverse seasonal of all time with Rise of the Underworlds, with 31 different decks in the top 32, and no single deck taking more than 10 spots, with Lee Sin and Draven Ezreal rounding out their insane 2021 year with the top 2 spots, followed by Sivir Demacia, Anivia, and Sivir Ionia. Now, there were a lot of 4-ofs in this top 32, Sivir Ionia and Anivia rounding out the top 5 with only 6 players in the top 32. Gives you an idea of just how spread out and diverse everything was, how chaotic of a meta this was. Very akin to the recent World Walker seasonal, where nobody had a phenomenal grasp on what was going on. And so Mo was able to slip through with aggro and actually claim the title. But now that you have an idea of what the meta looked like, a better idea than the players did at the time even, let's take a look at what Mo actually ran and go over the changes. First up, we have Elusive Rally, a deck that would sort of make its name at this seasonal and go on to dominate until the end of the Between Worlds seasonal. And a lot of this is because right after Guardians of the Ancient, we got our first really big buff patch in a while, putting Twin Discipline, Young Witch, Make It Rain, a lot of different regional staples back on the map, some of which have been nerfed today. But let's talk about the specific changes from when Mo played the deck to when I will be playing it today. The first nerf is Brightsteel Protector, of course, recently going down to a 2-1 from a 3-2. Young Witch, of course, having her buff undone, is now a 1-1 instead of a 1-2 when Mo got to play with her. And then we have Sharpsight, of course, getting nerfed down to +1/+2 instead of +2/+2, and Twin Discipline going down to only 2 attack instead of 3 attack, will still buff the health the same, and Relentless Pursuit has been nerfed. This was still the 3 mana Relentless when Mo played it. For me, it'll be 4 mana and grant +1/+1, but I think that cost increase does still warrant this a nerf, putting 5 nerfs in total on this deck alone. Now, Spiders and Pirates have been sort of the 2 big aggro decks for most of the lifespan of Legends of Runeterra, with a lot of the metas where we talk about aggro being good, Spiders and Pirates making a comeback, but usually struggling to find that third deck that's going to really make everything click together. Mo tried Spiders at Guardians, it didn't work out. This time around, he came equipped with Pirates. A couple of nerfs have happened. Gangplank lost a health point pretty recently, now down to a 5-4 instead of a 5-5. And then, of course, with the release of the World Walker expansion, Crackshot Corsair lost a health point down to a 1-1, and Imperial Demolitionist lost a health point down to a 2-2, but that actually does it for the nerfs on Pirates. And finally, we have what many would consider to be Mo's signature deck, Discard Aggro, Jinx Draven. Now, only one nerf has happened to this deck since Mo played it, and that is Draven losing a health point down to a 3-2 from a 3-3, and I think it was mostly the release of Scion that kind of pushed this deck out, a more consistent discard package for what you were looking to do. I know some people still tried Jinx Draven after all the new discard cards came out, but we all just kind of eventually settled on Scion, even transitioning into Burn Scion down the line. But yeah, not a lot of changes to this one. It's just really cool that I get to actually play a deck that a player was already known for coming into the event and get to run that through the gauntlet. So we'll see how it goes. Now, before we get into the final run here and I try to moonlight this series maintaining my 100% success rate, there are a couple things I want to highlight about Mr. Emotional's lineup specifically. Number one is that I'm not an aggro player. No matter what card game I play, it's just not an archetype that really meshes with me. I stay away from it, I don't enjoy it, yada yada, you can say whatever you want. Number two is that from the times that Mo played this lineup to now, these decks have received 9 nerfs and 0 compensation buffs. So not only am I out of my comfort zone, this is the most nerfed lineup that I've played to date. But I've gotten to know the gauntlet pretty well at this point, and I'm pretty confident that we can still pull it back and get a Prime Glory here to end us on a 5-0 streak. So I'm pretty immediately reminded that this is the Gauntlet, Boulevard. What are you worrying about with all these different meta decks running around and how your decks pair into the meta? This isn't where the meta comes to thrive, baby. So I'm going to take the Kai'Sa deck off the table just because it is the Kai'Sa deck. Also, Taric Severum could be an issue, so it just looks like the deck with the most healing and the most threatening champion, so it's kind of a no-brainer to take that one out for me. And then they take my Pirate aggro off the table. I'm going to kick things off with Discard aggro because I think it's a fun deck to play. And I get a pretty good curve. Not great for the Battlecaster, but a good curve. So I'm going to Zonite Urchin the Vision. Kind of waiting to see if they have Beard the Bellringer or Treasure Seeker. Turns out they have neither, so I get in some early damage. Feeling pretty good about that. I'm trying to kind of figure out what I'm going to do for the rest of this game. They throw down a landmark. Battlecaster's pretty free here. And then for turn 3, I don't want to open attack. I know I can push more damage than that, and I'm kind of mathing out if Arena Battlecaster, like second Battlecaster or Draven is more damage, especially if they develop a blocker. And I think at the end, Battlecaster came out to 1 additional damage, but I really valued getting the axes online, especially since I already had Rummage in hand. And on top of that, I have Jinx, so like I just want to get as many discard outlets as possible, level the Jinx. They're playing Shurima, so they don't have any removal for the Jinx, so if I can get her down, that's a good strategy winning the game. Waste Walker is not what I expected to see, and my opponent's going to block my Battlecaster. I want to get the blocker out of the way, so I'm just going to discard my 6-drop, my Augmented Experimenter, because I'm more concerned with the Jinx level up, and I think I can make that happen before the Experimenter really comes online. Plus, my opponent's already down to 9, so I don't think we're really going to make it that far in the game where I need the refuel, especially since I already have a little bit in hand. My opponent's going to draw a card. We're kind of waiting for them to like catch up on board, right, and start to go as wide as I am, and Bard means that they are simply not going to do that. I throw down a Jinx, they attack with the Bard. I choose not to block because if this is a landmark-based deck, which the Waste Walker would imply, Shaped Stone is something I'm cognizant of, and I don't want to just randomly lose my Jinx. So we're going to go for the Battlecaster here. I'm looking at, I'm pretty sure lethal, because I have not only Axe Vision, but the Get Excited. So I only need to deal 3 damage on this attack, which should be incredibly easy. I currently have a Get Excited lethal setup. My opponent quicksands my 2 quick attack units that they blocked. So I'm just going to discard Vision to the Axe. That gives me 3 extra damage. My opponent's totally tapped out. And that is going to be a very quick game 1 win. As you can see, 4 minutes is about what the time it took. And I got to say, when I was coming into this one, I was very excited about how little editing I was going to have to do, how many full turns of the game I could leave in, which I am happy to say we're on the right track for something like that. Getting into game number 2, Lulu Zed. This is one of these 3 decks that I'm the most worried about because A, there's no over-the-top damage, B, a lot of these cards have been nerfed, and I'm trying to figure out this mulligan, because I don't think I want Lulu and Zed, or rather I think it's too greedy to keep both of them. So I want to keep 1 champion and 1 protection spell, and I'm trying to figure out what's the right champion, what's the right protection spell, and while I'm still kind of puzzling over this, my opponent surrenders, and we start off our gauntlet run 1-0 with this aggro lineup after only having to play 1 game so far. No experience gotten on the Lulu Zed, but we pick up the win. Heading into round 2, nothing super recognizable, but the Twisted Fate Teemo is the new Powder Pandemonium deck that's been popping up, at least I'm pretty sure. And while I'm not as scared of the monkeys, I am a little bit worried about the fact that because they are trying to damage my Nexus every turn, they're probably just going to keep up on board really well, and I'm not going to be able to push through that. So I full mulligan again, as I'm going to find myself doing a lot with this card aggro. And then I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to Poro Cannon turn 1, and I'm trying really hard to figure out if I'm supposed to discard Rummage or Crowd Favorite, because if I discard Crowd Favorite, the Poros don't have as nice of a payoff. If I discard Rummage, I don't have refuel for later. I have the attack token on 1, so like it's just 1 damage anyway, and I'm rewarded for not knowing what I was supposed to discard when my opponent sandbags a Glory Seeker turn 2, and I top deck survival skills. So good job, Boulevard. Everything kind of really worked out for you there, despite you feeling like you were supposed to Poro Cannon on turn number 1. And then on turn 3, I can either go for both Daring Poros or Draven. Either way, it's going to be 4 damage coming in from either the Poros or the Draven alongside of my Arena Battlecaster, but because this is a Frostbite midrange deck, I'm cognizant of like Brittle Steel, so if I just send in Draven and it gets Brittle Steeled, I'm going to feel really bad. I want to diversify my damage as much as possible, and that means sending in the Poros. Plus now I get to bank a little bit of spell mana, draw another Draven, feels pretty good. Now I could throw down Jinx or the Crowd Favorite, or Draven, and I want to throw down Draven because I drew a second one, so I want that access to Whirling Death on the following turn. And I need to make sure that I'm as wide as possible for a potential Reckoning coming out of my opponent. And they go ahead and play the Landmark. Not super worried about that. Now, I draw Zonite Urchin, but I still throw down Crowd Favorite first, because I want to get that Crowd Favorite online if they have Reckoning. And if I play Zonite first and then they Reckoning, I'm never getting this Crowd Favorite online. And Jinx, I'm a little concerned about her being a great pillar option when I'm staring down a LeBlanc. So I will play the Zonite Urchin after the fact, because I still have the Whirling Death mana. And then I'm just going to full send my entire board, but that is why I played the Crowd Favorite before playing the Zonite Urchin. I feel like I really need to defend the lines that I take when I'm playing an unfamiliar archetype like this aggro deck. Flash Freeze comes out, that's fine, my opponent's completely tapped out, I have the Whirling Death. You know, I did lose my axe, so I'm not going to get to, like, level the Draven here, but it is what it is. And I'm feeling pretty good. You know, my opponent's going to be down to 5. They lose their entire board. I have a Jinx in hand and a Rummage, so I could probably level her next turn. I could definitely level her next turn since I have the spinning axe. You know, I just, like, discard something to an axe, Rummage the last card. Boom, I got a level Jinx. Won't get a Rocket that turn, but that's fine. Plus, I still have, you know, my entire board that my opponent has to somehow deal with 6 mana. And they can't figure it out. I can't figure it out. They just surrender. And we're moving on to game number 2, which is going to be the elusive rally up against the Frostbite midrange this time. Now, I don't know if I was supposed to keep Navori Blade Scout because I have the attacks on evens. Decided to throw it down anyway, because my opponent didn't play Omen Hawk, so whether it's elusive or just open attacks, it's kind of the same thing. I want to bank the spell mana, so I don't play Young Witch on 2, and I play a Lulu here, and I am immediately rewarded for banking the spell mana, as they're going to hit me with a LeBlanc. I have nothing to say about that. They throw out a Culling Strike onto my Lulu, and I'm able to defend it with the attack buff from the Twin Discipline, so that's why I didn't, like, throw down the Young Witch into the Navori Blade Scout and try to push a little bit more damage. I cared more about protecting my Lulu should a Culling Strike come, so good job, Boulevard. Round 4 comes. I still want to, like, maintain my Twin Discipline mana, and I care about that a little bit more than, like, the Fleet Feather into Young Witch combo. I think hard about, like, ghosting the Lulu here, but it seems like a little bit of a waste, and in hindsight, I probably should have done it anyway, because now I'm forced to, like, Twin Discipline here, and I think that, like, a Troll Chant comes out, or a Brittle Steel, or an Elixir of Iron. Something comes out to stop me from killing this LeBlanc. Yeah, it's a Troll Chant, so the LeBlanc's going to stay nice and healthy. I lose my Lulu, and I'm left with some pretty subpar units in hand. I get a Zed, which is, I guess, kind of ideal in terms of ghost targets, since I didn't use it on the Lulu. But in action, LeBlanc is a scary thing to face down. You know, they freeze my Navori Blade Scout, which is the only thing that I'd really care about blocking with, so I'm going to fall down to 4 here already. 17 life is a lot to chew through, but if I can find a rally, it sounds doable. So I'm going to go for the kill onto the LeBlanc here, because that is the one that's sort of kicking my ass the hardest. And also at 4, I'm pretty cognizant of, like, them just drawing LeBlanc spells in order to, you know, sort of just burn me out. They have another Troll Chant, so my Zed's gonna potentially fall here. I do go for the Elixir, or not Elixir, Twin Discipline. Get it back up to 3 attack. Last time I got Troll Chanted. They used it preemptively this time, so I am going to actually get to let my Zed survive, but I still very much feel on the back foot. Avarician Hearthguard comes down. I can't let any attackers through. I decide at this point I'm dead to Reckoning anyway, so I'm just going to throw out the Young Witch and kind of hope that I can survive this turn and then top deck a Rally. Now they draw the Glory Seeker. I'm able to barrier up my Zed and kind of keep my Rally win dream alive. They draw a lot of cards off of the Trifarian Assessor. And you know, I don't have, like, awful trades here. I think I can maintain enough of a board off of this attack that I can still win with a Rally top deck. I'm going to throw out all my blocks. You know, Young Witch, I decide, is the least amount of damage, so I'm going to throw that out. And then they drew a Sigil of Malice that they are going to use to pop the barrier on my Zed. Now, I go on a little bit longer there. I thought I had, like, 2 perfect top decks in a row that I had mathed out that could get me a win, but I didn't end up drawing them, so surrender a couple minutes after that. But, you know, that was really the point where the game was decided. The final nail in the coffin, if you will. And then this game, I feel like I've got a pretty okay opener. It's a little slower than I'd like, just because I don't have a 1-drop, which is, you know, not my favorite, but I've got enough elusives in both champions and a little bit of protection, so I'm feeling pretty okay. I'm not really sure what to expect from this deck. Obviously, like, it's Pyke Gwen, so the idea is that they're going to get a bunch of attack onto Pyke with Hallowed and, I guess, try to clear my board, but I don't know how many lurkers they have outside of that, if they're playing combat spells for the Pyke, like, what is Pyke spell? The single combat Bone Skewer. I'm not really sure what to expect here, but I'm sure that my Ranger's Resolve will come in handy at some point, so I'm very happy to have that. But in the meantime, you know, just kind of playing out my cards. They go for a Gwen. I decide to run out a couple of 2-drops here. Just really get as many units on board as possible. I don't really care about blocking this Gwen. All of my units look pretty good as attackers, so I'll take that damage. They're not Noxus, so there's no burn that I really have to worry about outside of, like, Atrocity, but I think the game might be over before we get to that. Now, initially I was going to slam Lulu, but because I top deck Relentless Pursuit, I decided to just make my entire board elusive and go for it, and I want to buff up the Zed because now Gwen can't block the Shadow safely, and my Rally is looking a little bit more like lethal. So they are going to block the Shadow. That's all fine by me. I'm just looking to Relentless Pursuit and win and play around like a Withering Wail or a Vile Feast with my Ranger's Resolve. They throw down the Pyke. Doesn't really matter. I throw the Relentless Pursuit onto my Young Witch, and I can't think of anything they can do, and neither can they, so they surrender, and we are moving on 2-0 so far with the triple aggro lineup. Feeling pretty good. Starting to get that confidence. Heading into the third round, we finally spot some real decks, and I decide that I'm not dealing with Kaisa right now. This is not the time to deal with Kaisa. So we're going to queue up the Pirate aggro up against Annie Jin. I just mull my Noxian Fervor. You know, it's going to be a little bit awkward. I'll draw one later. I'm not too worried about it. The opponent has the attack token on 1, so trying to figure out what they're going to do turn 1. They do nothing, so I'm going to throw down a Legion Rearguard. Now, I have the Grenadier, but I decide that with my opponent not playing a 1-drop, I can probably just go wider than them with the double Jagged Butcher. They go for a Tusk Speaker. It's fine by me. I'm just going to throw out my other Jagged Butcher. I'm not really too concerned with turning these into 3/3s. I just really like the idea of having 3 creatures to my opponent's 1. So going to full swing here. My opponent actually doesn't block at all. So they're already down to 12 on the third turn. They go for the Demolitionist. You know, I don't have, or I'm not going to Fervor that, rather. You know, like, I have the interaction, but I'm not going to play it. Throw down a Misfortune. They full send their units here. And I don't know what they thought I was going to be afraid of, but I'm just going to block the Demolitionist with the MF, so that feels really free to me. Like, I don't think they're playing Flock or Blade's Edge or anything crazy like that. I'm just going to go in for the open attack here, put my opponent at 1, and, you know, have the Noxian Fervor on backup. They Fervor my MF, they forget to Ghost Block something, so they are going to take a lot more damage than they probably should have. I decide that I don't really need to Fervor right now. I can wait until, like, I have Jack the Winner on board to Fervor. Like, I'm going to get a chance to do it. I don't need to do it right there when they still have a little bit of mana left up to interact with me. Fire off the Zap Spray Fin, see what I can get out of this. Maybe another Fervor to end the game. Make it rain, good enough for me. So my opponent plays a second unit. I'm just going to fire off the Make It Rain to guarantee the 1 damage onto the Nexus. I, like, tried to count out my mana real quick, figure out if I could slip a Zap Spray Fin in there. But I decided that I want to take the Make It Rain while I can, while I guarantee the damage on the face. And then they go for a Doom Beast. 2 mana, they shouldn't be able to stop me, so I'm going to fire off my Noxian Fervor and kill them in response to that life gain. And pretty easy game here. I'm not super familiar with, like, aggro versus Annie Jin, if it's supposed to be able to win those matchups, but my opponent didn't really draw any of the stuns that would have given me an issue, like Arachnoid Sentry, Sunhawk, any of that. So now we're moving on to the Spider Gwen up against Elusive Rally. Now, I play this matchup pretty wrong because I keep forgetting that this is just Spider aggro. I kept expecting, like, Catalog Conservatory type cards, which I don't think you usually get out of Gwen and Elise. But I never know with these people. But I do just, like, kind of forget that this is Spider aggro, so I kind of play like it's a control deck. I'm worried about, like, Ravenous Flock and Vile Feast and these kinds of things. And I'm not, like, aggressively trading with my champions like I should be, because, like, Lulu's champion spell sucks. So I want to make sure that my opponent can't level Elise here. And I probably... Maybe I should just trade Lulu, but I have such a good play if I don't trade Lulu. Like, I think this block is fine. Like, I'm trying to just keep the Elise off of leveling. It's unfortunate that they have the Crawling Sensation in order to level her anyway. But it is what it is. You know, this isn't exactly the moment where I should have, like, sacked my Lulu. I think that block was fine. And now I get to go for, like, Fleet Feather Tracker. And I think this is where I should sack the Lulu. Like, I Brightsteel Protector the Lulu instead of the Fleet Feather Tracker. And my opponent has 2 champions I want to take out, so I'm going to take out the Elise. Now, I would survive if I took out Gwen. The problem is that if I take out Gwen, then all of my opponent's Spiderlings still have Challenger, and I lose my entire board. But I think it would have been fine to lose the Lulu there, because what else am I... Like, Whimsy's just not a great card. I'm going to throw down a Zed here, and I'm looking like I've got a pretty good chance at lethal on the following turn with the Rally. So I'm just going to take, like, a minimal block here. I probably should have blocked one of the Spiderlings with Zed, but again, I was, like, unnaturally worried about Ravenous Flock and Blade's Edge and Vile Feast when I really shouldn't have been. Don't think it would have really changed the impact of the game, though, or the outcome of the game, rather. So I'm going to run out my units here, make sure that I still have mana for Twin Discipline and Relentless Pursuit. Go in for my attack. You know, that's 8 damage coming in, or 9 damage that's coming in, it's elusive, rather, so I have lethal with the Relentless Pursuit, but I get hit with a double Noxian Fervor, and I don't have any interaction for that. Took just a little bit too much damage, and I am going to pay the price for it. But that's fine, you know, Annie Jin is the last deck for my opponent. It's not a deck that I particularly respect, so I'm pretty confident in my ability to pick up game 3 here. I'm gonna mulligan everything that isn't my champion. Pick up a Fleet Feather Tracker, you know, feeling pretty happy about that with the Lulu, especially if my opponent goes for, like, an early Annie. I would like a 2-drop to activate this when I have the attack token, especially if they play an Annie, but they go for Crackshot Corsair, so I'm fine to take the block here. I think the getting Lulu and Fleet Feather online together is pretty far away from now, and if they open attack on 3, I'd end up making this trade anyway, so might as well just make it now. I draw another Fleet Feather, though. You know, I like that. I'm okay with that. And my opponent Sunhawks it. She's fine by me. Obviously, they're going to have, like, a better open attack, but I wasn't really worried about attacking with this Fleet Feather. And now I can go ahead and get down my Lulu, which gives me, like, really good trades into my opponent's board on the following turn. They go for a stagehand, actually, to, like, you know, take my Lulu out of play as well. And I'm, you know, 3 cards in hand. I decide I can just take all this damage. I do want to get that Annie off the field. So I'll go down to 11 here. I think I can kill my opponent before they can really finish me off with burn, especially if I can draw a rally. And one of the reasons that I'll, like, constantly mulligan rallies in this deck is because I think you play, like, 5 of them. I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember the deck list, but I thought it was, like, 2 Relentless Pursuit and 3 Golden Aegis or something like that. So here I'm just going, like, really wide on board. Got a lot of really good threats established. I actually, like, I think I high rolled this run pretty well in terms of, like, top decking my champions. We're gonna turn our 2-1 into a certified threat and try to take out the Annie with a normal Fleet Feather tracker. Everything should work out fine here. And my opponent just takes it. Just takes 15 damage down to 5, which, you know, I've got elusive threats on backup, so I'm pretty sure I've got lethal if they can't kill me this turn, and I'd be surprised if they could kill me on 5. All I have to do is make sure that I'm not, like, falling back into Fervor range. So we're going to just develop a few more blockers. Our opponent's going to go in for the attack, pull it back even, and decide to run out a Legion Rearguard as well, which gives me the ability to Fey Guide my Zed, so I've got guaranteed lethal on the following turn with 2 elusive 5-attack units. All I have to do is make sure that my Zed survives, so I just block with everything that isn't named Zed. Fey Guide gave me enough of a health pool that I didn't even need to commit the Ranger's Resolve to make sure that I'm not taking 1 overwhelm damage. And with 8 health and 1 card and no board on my opponent's side of the field, I'm pretty sure this Zed is just going to be lethal on the following turn. My opponent didn't top deck whatever they were hoping to top deck. They're going to surrender. That is going to put us at 3-0 so far, already very quickly onto our last round here for the Prime Glory. Last week, I had to play against quite a few Bard decks. I'm not dealing with that this time around. We're going to take that Bard Alawi off the table. I also remember, like I mentioned earlier, discard aggro into Frostbite midrange was one of the most one-sided matchups back in, like, 2020. I don't expect much has changed about that. And I remember the reason that Mo brought aggro to Guardians of the Ancients was specifically to beat Azir Aurelia, so I'm fine leaving that deck up as well. I get a very good opener here with, you know, double rear guard as well as my vision combo, so to speak. So I'm going to take the Omen Hawk on turn 1. Whatever, man. I'm not too worried about that. Run out my second rear guard. I kind of think about, you know, is it better if I just, like, discard the Chompers? But I'm like, no, balls to the wall. I don't know when I'm going to be able to get this vision down if I don't do it now, just because I don't have another discard outlet, and 3 mana is kind of a lot to pay for that card. So I'll go ahead and take my 8 damage here if my opponent decides to go for the trade, which they do. And they actually have to proactively Brittle Steel in order to make sure that they're staying relatively healthy. But I already get 1 Decimate into the Nexus in the form of that rear guard. And the attack is permanent, so these are going to sort of stick around in that nature. Draven's a great top deck, like a phenomenal top deck. Get my Spinning Axe to actually get the Chompers online, play that with a Battlecaster next turn. Don't expect my opponent to play, like, great on defense from here on out. If they top deck the Yeti, you know, it's, like, kind of whatever, because I can still just pull that to the side with the Chompers. If they play a second Trapper, I am going to Axe my Battlecaster to make sure that they don't have a free trade. And if they want to block most damage possible, then they weren't going for that anyway. I should be good to just push, like, an insane amount of damage here. They still got 2 mana, so I'm worried about, like, Brittle Steel, Troll Chant, but they're not able to mitigate anything, and they're already down to effectively 1 because I have Get Excited in hand. And then if that doesn't work out, you know, I have this Augmented Experimenter as well. My opponent is still representing Reckoning mana, so I decide I don't want to start playing out Poros yet. Once the Ash comes down, then I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, Reckoning's off the table. We can just run out these Daring Poros. Only one of these needs to connect on the Nexus next turn, and I am chilling. They hold back the Ash, which, you know, I don't really care about. I'm just going to go ahead and take 8 damage. It's fine by me. They don't have any over the top. I'm getting down my Poros. I'm just looking to get through that 1 damage. Pretty straightforward card gaming here, where I'm just like, yeah, you know, hit me. Life is a resource. All I care about is my Battlecaster and these Poros. And then I draw a second Get Excited to make sure that no matter what, this game is over. Unless they rally on me this turn and kill me, but that's not happening. They go for a Harsh Winds. Take out a couple of my units in terms of attack. Full block. I still push through the 2 damage. That's all I need. I have the Get Excited in hand, just waiting for the damage to actually resolve so that they can't throw out another Troll Chanter, Brittle Steel. You know, if I put the Get Excited on the stack first, I just want to save time here. Save myself some editing headache. and just wait until the perfect moment to clap my opponent's Nexus into oblivion. So, game 2, still up against Frostbite midrange, back on the Elusive Rally, which I believe is the only deck I've taken losses on so far. I think I've got 100% on the other 2 decks, and then this is the one that I've been struggling with a little bit because I randomly ran into like 2 Frostbite decks. Who expected that? But my opponent's going to Culling Strike my unit immediately. You know, I don't get to push as much damage as I wanted to, but it's fine. My Inspiring Mentor will continue to inspire me. A Reckless Trifarian is not what I expected, but, you know, it does let me develop Zed and have an 8 damage open attack, which I'm pretty happy with. I'm just going to skip the block on that. They can't, you know, block my units, so my open attack looks really good. I'd rather push the 2 damage with the Mentor. They go for Culling Strike onto Zed, and I'm torn between Tin Discipline and Sharpsight, and I eventually go for Sharpsight because I want to play around the Brittle Steel that they're still representing with 1 mana. So this way, my unit has 4 health, they can't Brittle Steel it to make sure that the Culling Strike resolves. If I pumped it up to 5 attack with Twin Discipline, they could still set it back down to 0, and I would be out of Zed, and I'd actually be looking in a little bit of a rough spot if I don't have this Zed, you know, with the Rally and the Ghost and all this kind of stuff. They go for the Trifarian Glory Seeker, but I have the Golden Aegis, so I'm going to get Barrier onto my Zed. It's going to be a little bit too tough for them to chew through with their Glory Seeker. Just kind of mathing this out. I'm like, I don't know if I have lethal this turn. It kind of depends on a Frostbite, but my opponent knows their hand, knows I have lethal, is going to surrender anyway, and that is going to do it. That was a very quick run. I believe the game count was 8-2. So yeah, we did it. 5-0. And with this Prime Glory, we are 5-0 with our 5 2021 Seasonals, the Monuments of Power with Push P, the Cosmic Creation with Majin Bay, Empires of the Ascended with a Rigby, Guardians of the Ancient with Duckling, and finally Rise of the Underworlds with Mr. Emotional. I have won the Gauntlet with all 5 of their lineups, and this is where the series ends for now, as, like I said, Moe's Seasonal was a little bit less than a year ago, so I feel like the Bandle City Seasonals are just like a little bit too recent to really do right now, plus this is a lot of editing. But I hope you guys enjoyed this series, and it will probably be back in the future once we've had a little bit more time between the more recent Seasonals, because this was a lot of fun, and I am very happy that I was able to highlight these older lineups and show that they can still compete, at least in the Gauntlet, if you are even a competent enough player as, yeah. So this was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this series. Like I said, it probably will be back, and thank you so much for watching. Again, I have been Boulevard, and